So our title talk today is Unexpected Delight. As you all know, my favorite, one of my favorite quotes is, "If it's not paradoxical, it's not true," by Shinro Suzuki. And we've been talking about vision all month long. That when we continue to ask, we're persistent every night, before every meditation, before every prayer time is, what is the highest vision for my life? The idea is just to listen, not to go on past precedent, but what's that new idea that wants it to be birthed through us and as us? So it comes from first cause. And when we grasp that vision, it's so empowering because nothing can take it away from us. Not just conditions and circumstances. Time can't take it away from us. So there's no hurry. It's not like I have to get it done or it's not going to happen. There is a solidness, there's a peacefulness in just knowing this is mine to do. It was given for me by first cause, by the divine presence to be done, and I just walk in that empowered energy. But the shadow side of saying, what is my vision, is sometimes we don't get our vision all at once, or we might have intuitive feelings towards it, and it might feel like I'm asking, I'm not getting an answer. So what it can start to develop in us is a waiting consciousness. Like, oh, I can't really live my life fully. I can't really know the delight of life until I know my vision. And so there's sort of a feeling like I'm always waiting for something to happen. And so that's what led to today's talk about the unexpected delight. And it's really... I want to talk about it also in terms of meditation because it can seem like there's two different purposes, intentions behind meditation, but they actually work very well together. One intention of meditation is to open up to expanded worlds, to maybe focus on the third eye, which is sort of the visionary chakra, and open up to and recognize these multidimensionals and have all the multidimensional experiences and visions and sort of, in essence, almost what Arjuna had, but otherworldly, not right here and now. And then there's the more Zen Buddhist practice of just being fully present in the moment. Eckhart Tolle, I think, has a very Zen perspective, which is just don't resist the moment, accept everything as it arises. And so that's a little bit about what I'm talking about today. So we can, and they work together because one of the things that can get lost in the vision isn't about the vision is about who we are becoming. And the only way we are becoming is in the present moment. We don't become something in the future without changing something or being fully present to what's happening now. So today's talk is about discovering the divine in the now. And I'm actually going to start with an agnostic. And this was inspired, there's a young man, delightful young man, who I met was a barista at Starbucks. And he's always talking and chatting, and I just knew he was interested in ideas, so we started talking about different ideas. And we've stayed in touch over the years. He went off to college. He's back now with his beloved and has a baby and working in San Francisco in a tech firm. But I sent him an email, and I said, because he's a millennial, he's in his 20s, I said, I keep hearing about you agnostic millennials, and that you're not interested in church anymore or spiritual stuff, and I just want to see what's important to you. So we got together over at Starbucks a month or two or so ago and had a wonderful conversation. And one of the things he was saying that for him made a difference was he's agnostic, not a theologian, a philosopher, John Paul Sartre. Are you all at least heard of him? He's an existentialist. And he said what he liked about Sartre and the way he puts it into practice in his life, Sartre says, and it's very Buddhist, make a choice, take an action. Don't worry. What you want to do is use your mind, use your reason, use your intuition, look at all the pros and cons, and then make a choice. But relax when you make the choice. Don't make a choice and then worry that you made the wrong choice. Because you went on all the information that you had and you did the best you could, and just accept that. Give yourself fully to the choice that you made, and if you need to make another choice, then you can do that. But give yourself to the choice. And he said that was very freeing for him to not agonize. And I thought it was interesting because I think often we all struggle with that. I think in their 20s, especially because you're trying to make the perfect choice for your whole life, which is can be overwhelming. And if you stop trying to make the perfect choice, just make a choice. And But I also thought of it when I took a social psychology class in college. It was in the 80s. So this was research based on in the 80s. They were researching levels of happiness of women. And what they found was that women actually reported being happier in the 50s than they were in the 80s. And the reason why is because they had less choices. You basically were going to be a housewife, teacher, or nurse. And so the women in the 80s preferred having more choices. They wanted to have the options. They didn't want to go back to the 50s, but it brought a lot more stress. Because now you have a lot more options open to you. Now what a choice. So choices are actually, we talk about them as being very freeing, but it seems to be that the more choices we have, and we certainly are in a world where we have infinite amount of choices all of the time to make. What channel do I watch on 500 stations? There's so many options. YouTube, internet, the internet. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. And our world gets so big, or so much bigger, and traveling is so much easier. There's so many choices and options, and people don't stay in one job for 40 years. People have many, many jobs and move around. And so how do we feel the joy when we have all these? My point is that they were saying that the more choices we have, the less happy we are. We like having the choices, we like the freedom of the choices, but the less happy we are. So what Paul Sartre was saying, and what this young gentleman had taken on fully in his life is, I'm making a choice, and I'm just going to accept that this is the right choice. I'm not taking one choice and say, well, maybe this was the right choice, maybe it was the wrong choice, one foot in and one foot out, constantly reliving in Christian mysticism. They say despair is a sin, which I never heard of. First of all, we believe in sin, but the idea is that it takes you away from God. And despair is sort of like, I made the wrong choice. Paul Sartre's saying, no, make a choice and be happy that you made it. You went on the best information that you had, and if you get new information after that, then you can make a new choice. Shunryu Suzuki says, say yes. Leave your old self, step forward and say yes to the new self. And then if you need to say yes to a new self, you say yes to a new self. But it's a constant moving forward in this yes energy without sort of constantly despairing about what could have been or what might have been. And what Nick, I should have said his name, sorry, young man said was how he just enjoys his life. He got, some people were saying, you're a father too early, or he had many options. He's interested in a lot of things. Did he make the right choice? And he said that's what gave him freedom. I'm not doubting my choice. I like action. Action is what even though he likes to think and he likes philosophy, taking a step, making a choice. So part of the unexpected delight is just the joy of making a choice and not worrying about if it's the right one, because you can always make another choice. And two, when you make that choice, is going all in. For those of you who read my email, that really has hit me about the energy of what that is. When we make an all in, when we put both feet in, I won't go too much into the basketball thing, but it was pretty exciting to see a city like Cleveland, who hasn't won anything in 3 sports, and you just get used to losing. And that just becomes a habit pattern. And so for people to say we're all in, willing to risk our heart again after 52 years of every single sport, longer than I've been alive, losing, and saying, but doesn't matter. I'm all in on this choice. On this, I am all in. And I got to see the power of that collective energy of what happens when we just move with, I don't care what happens. I'm all in. Because when we make a choice, it doesn't mean that it's going to succeed. It doesn't mean it's going to be a failure, a success, but on the human level. But if we're all in, it's going to be a success because our whole being now is in the present tense. See, what happens is when we're not fully all in, there's a part of us that's still living in the past. And that's what Buddhism is teaching. That's what Eckhart Tolle is teaching. That's just, the despair comes from living in the past, or if you're so focused on living a vision, and my happiness is going to come from fulfilling that vision, and I'm not going to be happy until that vision out there is fulfilled. That's living in the future. The joy, the unexpected delight is to be fully 2 feet in, whole soul, whole body in the present moment. I think of Joseph in Genesis. Went back a couple thousand years, actually more than that. Because I love that story. I love the story of Joseph where he gets sold into slavery by his brothers. When you read the story, he's not constantly beating up his brothers in his head. He's not constantly living in the past like, oh my gosh, my dad loved me so much and now my life will never be like that again. I can't believe my brothers did that to me. He kept being fully present in the moment. Because what happens, and I've learned this because I've been, I don't want to say guilty of it, but I've done it. And it was Ernest Holmes that woke me up. Often when we're doing spiritual practices and they're not showing up the way we want them to, then we stop doing the spiritual practices. We stop doing the prayer work. And he said, that's when you need to be doing it the most. It's easy to do prayer work. It's easy to do spiritual practices when everything is flowing. When everything is going against you and you feel like you're doing your prayer work and your spiritual practices and it's everything, you feel like, well, why do it? And you want to quit. But that's the time when you want to quit is the time to do it. That's like the warning signal. This is the time to really do your practices, to see the divine in the midst of when everything goes wrong. Because what happens is when we stop doing it, we constrict. Our hearts constrict, our energy constricts, and we no longer become a vehicle for new life to come in. So what if Joseph had so constricted that he didn't allow, while he was in prison, those dreams to come through, those visions to come through? If he had constricted and just shut down and said, there's no God will let me get sold off into slavery. There's no, and when I mean God, I mean a force for good in my life. There's no infinite transcendent power that is good and loving. And so he shut down, but he didn't. He continued to stay in the present moment where he was, in the circumstances that brought him into slavery, into the prison, and even in the midst of all that constriction, the visions came, and that pulled him out to work with the Pharaoh. And I've mentioned it before, I always love, so many people, when they were in prison, is when they find God. When we get enclosed, but we stay open. So our external circumstances and conditions seem so limited, but we stay open. That's what it is. Our conditions may seem really limited if we're stuck in an area, but we can keep our heart open. That's when new life starts to get birthed in the midst of the darkness. And so he has this new birth in terms of the external, goes off and works with the Pharaoh, and I think you all know the story of Pharaoh. I have to say, I think because as I'm talking to my young gentleman friend, he's never had any religious training, knows no Bible stories, so it's an interesting thing how different the generations are. I talk about these stories with the assumption that everybody knows them. Does everyone know the story of Joseph here? I'm not going to ask anyone to say they don't know it. But I'm assuming, my assumption is that most people know the story. Some people know the story of Joseph? Okay, so, Joseph was... No, he was the youngest, was it? Yeah, second youngest. Benjamin was the youngest. So there's 12 brothers, and his father liked him the most, and the brothers were jealous, and so they sold him to slavery to the Egyptians. The Egyptians took him off to, Egypt, but Cairo, right? And he was put in jail, and then he had these dreams, which were visions, and he was sharing them with somebody. I think it was the cake baker, and they told, when they were talking to the Pharaohs, it was about predicting the 7 years. You're going to have 7 years of lots of food and then 7 years of famine, so you need to store up the food that you get, because in 7 years you're going to have famine, and because of that, Egypt survives the famine because of his dreams, and so he's catapulted right up there next to the Pharaoh. His brothers, the Israelites, are suffering from the starvation. They go to Egypt they don't realize that this is what's happened with their brother, but they have suffered from the famine. They go into Egypt, and they realize that this guy who works for the Pharaoh is their brother. And so they start apologizing and saying, first of all, they reveal themselves, that we're your brothers. Or no, he knew. Then he revealed himself to them. And they're on their knees, we're so sorry we did that. And my favorite line of Genesis, you all know, I see some of you nodding. What man meant for evil, human beings meant for evil, God meant for good. To me, that's the most profound thing as we walk into our world. Even if sometimes human beings do mean it for evil, sometimes they do it out of ignorance. Whatever is happening on the human world, that if we can just have that faith that God is working everything out for good. You have to be able to, on the one hand, see beyond the present moment and yet fully be in the present moment. That's how I see Joseph. He was seeing beyond it in the transcendent when we have a faith in something bigger than us, that it's infinitely good. But at the same time, he was fully present. He wasn't living in the past. He wasn't yelling at God, why did you do this to me? He just kept opening up. This is where I am now. This is where I am now. This is where the unexpected delight starts to show up. We make choices, and then we just are full in. We just go in, and it's scary. It can be scary because that choice could take us beyond our comfort zone. So we also, maybe not even because we're afraid we made the wrong choice, but for safety, we hold back a little bit, put our toe in because it feels unsafe to make that choice. But the new life comes when you go in all in. New life starts pouring through us. So you make a choice and you go all in with that choice. And then thirdly and this is where I would say it a little bit different than an agnostic, is I go to love the Lord our God with our whole heart, body, mind, and soul. That no matter what is happening in our life, when it's really good, when it's really bad, when it's mundane, when it's ordinary, to love the divine presence, the infinite love intelligence of the universe with our whole heart, body, mind, and soul. That's being fully present in the moment. That's what was happening. So when Krishna is giving Arjuna that vision, prior to that, he gives, among all the other theology, he gives Arjuna the 4 paths to God. Bhakti, the devotional path. Bhakti, love, devotion. Jnana yoga, which is reflection, knowledge. Karma yoga, service, action. And then Raja yoga, which is meditation, direct contact. So those are the 4 paths to God. And by the way, I think most of you know this, but Carl Jung, that's what he based the Myers-Briggs on, the 4 thinking, feeling, sensing, perception, intuition, perception, is it? And those were based on the 4 paths of God. So he's saying, but this is why I love Hinduism, it's so vast. It doesn't say there's only one way to know God. There's people of different styles to know God. But in this penultimate experience, he said, and of all of them, just your pure love is what's going to open you up. Because you're not going to reflect on the divine if you don't love the divine. What draws us into reflection and knowledge and contemplation is the love. We're not going to do service like a Mother Teresa if it's not inspired by love. We're not going to want to sit in meditation for hours and have direct contact if it's not for love. That love is what undergirds all of it. And that was Krishna's point to Arjuna, is that all these paths are there, but it's the love. It's that devotion to say, I want to know God. And when we say we want to know God, because I'm thinking of our community song later, it's not about, I want to know God in the future. It's like, I want to know God right now. I'm calling forth. Yogananda always says, just keep calling on God. God will answer. You got to keep calling. But the calling is about knowing that the omnipotent and the omnipresence is right here now. It is who we are. It's not something in the future. It is closer to us than our very breath. So when we're calling on it, we're not calling off to something far away to have an experience in the future, but we're calling on it to know it now in the present moment. So we choose, we step in, we're all in, and we're here to see the divine. And that divine is in the extraordinary and the ordinary. So sometimes we step in, and I can have, just to give a very human experience, the extraordinary moment of winning an NBA championship. I can step forward and just say, just the very ordinary breath, the beauty of the divine in just a breath, the beauty of just being here in this moment with everyone here. It's very ordinary. There's nothing special. Nothing extraordinary is happening. But if I'm willing to let my heart just be open, to know that all the love that has ever been, all the love that ever will be, is right now. So it's just being here together. And it's nothing special, and yet it's special. That's the unexpected delight of living in God, of living in the moment, of being fully present. My favorite thing that I heard in one of meditation teachers say is when we're with the breath is never in the past and the breath is never in the future. It can only be in the moment. So when we continue to bring ourselves back to that breath and notice, is my heart wide open? Do I love in this moment, even as I see all the faces and we're all looking at each other, to know that behind all of our faces, behind all of our forms, there's this extraordinary presence. That in fact, the more we get to know that in this ordinary moment, as we're with all each other, there's actually no boundaries. There's no limits. There's no walls here. As we're one with each other, we are one with this entire city of Livermore, the Bay Area, California, the United States, the entire planet, and all of sentient life, all the cosmos, all the dimensions, just right now. That there's no limit to now. There's no limit to time and space when we're fully present. That's the awesome miracle of every moment. Unexpected delight is when we start opening ourselves to the amazing, infinite beauty of the universe that is unfolding itself before us moment by moment. Are you willing to just open to the magnificence of pure spirit? Make your choices. So today, and I'm sure you've heard this before, even in not making a choice, we're making a choice. So today, be conscious of all the little choices we're making, because we're making little ones all the time. Where am I going to go for lunch? What am I going to do next? What am I going to do we start planning for the week? What are my plans for the week? I want you to be conscious of all the choices that you're making, and just be conscious that you're making them. And then say, am I fully engaged in these choices that I'm making? Is my whole body and soul invested in this choice am I making, or am I just sort of making it but not thinking about it? I'm going to go have lunch, and then I'm just going to eat my lunch and not think about it. Or am I going to really think about where I want to go, and when I go, I'm fully present to the experience of my lunch, to the restaurant I chose, or my home if I chose to eat at home, the meal that I chose to eat, that I'm fully in, that the divine presence is right there in that moment. And then what I'm going to do next, am I invested in that, or am I just sort of, okay, this is what I'm going to do next? Is life leading us, or are we fully invested? That's unexpected delight. That's really living a life of vision, because that's when our life opens up and becomes exactly what it's supposed to be without effort. Let's pray. Love the time. Choose, be all in, and love the Lord our God with our whole heart, body, mind, and soul. No matter what. No matter what. And so I celebrate here and now that we are together here and now. That we are not already in the afternoon. Our breakfast in the morning is mostly gone by. That we are just in this moment together as one, consciously choosing to be in this prayer together. Whatever this prayer is, we are choosing to be present to it. Whether we like it or don't like it, it doesn't matter. We just choose to be fully present. And as we are present to this prayer, we recognize that their prayers are being spoken all over the world, right here and right now. Sometimes in a room by themselves, a blessing before a meal, in other services, honoring the presence and power of God. That we're joining whoever is praying all over the world right in this moment. That we are a community that has no walls. We are a community where our love has no walls. For we are one in the love of pure spirit. God's love has no beginning or ending. It is vast, beyond our wildest imagination. It is energetically powerful. It is a force. It is creative. It is loving. It is intelligent. It is good. And it is breathing us now. All that love, all that intelligence, all that goodness, all that power is breathing itself as us, each and every one of us now, all over this planet. It is breathing itself alive and awake as all of us now. It is breathing us to know our freedom and our delight in living, that there is nothing to fear ever, that it is impossible to make a wrong choice, that we step out in our choices and fully engage in them, loving the Lord our God, the source of all life, first cause, the thing itself, the universe, energy, great spirit, Brahma, Allah, Jehovah, the ground of all being, with our whole heart, body, mind, and soul. We are it now. We are alive and awake now. We are free now. We are in the unexpected and the expected delight now. We are God's blissful, creative, intelligent beings now. We are undeniably good, kind, and generous. We are God's beautiful, radiant lighthouses. I am so grateful for the fulfillment of God in, through, and as this prayer, for all those who are struggling in our own community, in our families, among our friends, on this planet. We call forth that even there the goodness of God is, that which feels like it is for bad or for evil, we hold, we keep our heart open, we stand in the choice to be all in, knowing that even there, goodness is even now emerging. The wholeness and the perfection of God is even now revealing itself. There is something being answered in those prayers, serving and helping and supporting anyone who is suffering from separation, from not enoughness, from sickness, from disease, from lack of understanding. The divine love intelligence of the universe is responding even now. How grateful I am for the healing that is always taking place, especially as we come together in this collective consciousness of healing. And I give special blessing to everyone in this community as we go through our journeys, that we support one another, we see the truth of one another. We are all in seeing the power and the presence and the love of God as our neighbors, as ourselves. For all this good and more than words could ever possibly say, I just say thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mother, Father, God, infinite and eternal one. I completely release this word now, knowing that as it is spoken, it is done now. I invite us all to say together now, and so it is. Amen.
So it is, and so it is, and so it is. Amen. 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 And so it is. Amen.